Okay, and we're live. Hi guys, this is Nicky from Lifestyle Alchemy, and I've got a beautiful guest panelist here for my Q&A for tonight's course, which is part 1 of the Shadows into Light workshop. I guess I'll just introduce my guest panelists first. I've got Diane with me. I've got Elizabeth, Martina, and Todd also. So these guys are going to sort of act as your voices. So if they have any questions during the course, they're going to ask them on your behalf. Also, if you're watching on the live page, you can also put your comments and questions down there in the little box, and I'll answer them as well as we go along. So let's jump straight into it. So I'm really excited to bring this one to you guys. What I'll do is I'll just start sharing my screen with you. Okay. So can you guys just give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Awesome, thank you. Hey Visa, how are you?
Hello.
Good to see you, hon. If you could just mute yourself out for now, and if you have any questions throughout the course, just unmute yourself and ask any questions, or use the chat box on the side to ask any as well. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so welcome to Shadows into the Light, Shadow Work with Archetypes. Okay, so what we're going to be discussing in this workshop is the Universal Survival Workshops. I'm just going to put my glasses on so I can actually read. So what are Universal Survival Archetypes? These are the 4 archetypes affecting everyone. Their energy activates human survival instincts. These archetypes emerge whenever there are threats, major life crises, challenges in life. They will influence and control you to do anything to survive. Without the guidance of your soul, your personality uses the survival archetypes to negotiate your personal power in exchange for physical security. This is your personality's function. When you learn to command your personalities, these archetypes become the guardians of your integrity, and they support you to contain your power within you. The function matures to maintain your wholeness by working in harmony with other archetypes. So every archetype has a light and shadow aspect. These light aspects of the survival archetypes bring about harmony and balance with other archetypes, and the shadow side become chaotic and destructive, separating you into conflicting parts. So they're the survival. That's basically what the survival archetypes are about. The moment your survival is fresh and you'll go into one of these 4 archetypes, and most of us will go into most of us will go into the one which is the most prevalent in humankind, and that is the victim archetype, and that's the one we're going to go through today. So the victim archetype. Now, I've just taken these quotes from Caroline Myss. I'm sure some of you have heard of her. She's amazing with her work on archetypes. And I've taken this quote because basically she summarizes it better than I ever could, and just perfectly. So, the victim archetype. I don't want you to be misled by the name of this archetype. When properly recognized, the victim can alert you to the possibility that you are about to let yourself be victimized, whether through passivity or inappropriate actions. It can also help you to recognize your own tendency to victimize others for personal gain. We need to develop this clarity of insight. However, that means learning the nature and intensity of the victim. In its shadow manifestation, the victim tells you that you are always taken advantage of and it's never your fault. You may like to play the victim at times because of the positive feedback we get in form of sympathy or pity. Our goal is always to learn how to recognize these inappropriate attitudes in ourselves or others and to act accordingly. We are not meant to be victimized in life, but to learn how to handle challenges and outrun our fears. So I just think that's a perfect summarization of, a really quick summarization of the victim archetype. And of course, as I promised, we're going to have a discussion on the victim archetype, and we're going to go a lot deeper into that. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. Okay. All right, so let's get deep into this. Okay, so why is it important that you get familiar, if not intimate, with the victim archetype? It's because throughout your lifetime, situations we call for this primal survival archetype, and it will come up over and over again to protect you, to challenge you, and most importantly to learn from. So this is why I set you the pre-course exercises, so you would be able to have a chance before this course to look back and to start identifying patterns in your life that are happening now and in your past. That way you could look back on the work and identify which of these patterns are, for the most part anyway, for this course, patterns of the victim archetype. If you haven't done the pre-course exercises, that's fine. You'll just have to work a little bit harder perhaps, and go back and watch the videos on these exercises I have set out for you guys. And you can find links to these on my page, so I can put those links on the discussion page below this video if you'd like. I also set out exercises for you to do on practicing non-judgmental behaviour. Now this is important to this course because if you're harshly judging yourself throughout this course, you're going to miss points of growth that you can have here. You're identifying parts of yourself here. You're not judging yourself, and you need to keep that in mind. So within the victim archetype, one of the greatest lessons to be had is boundaries. One of the main soul lessons of the victim archetype is boundaries. So while we're on the subject of judgment, let's talk about putting boundaries around judging a person and ourselves. I want you to imagine binding your judgment field. So what that means is you need to listen to what people have to say when they talk. If you don't judge a person, it only gives you an option to understanding that person. Make sense? So a judgment means you do not have to. A judgment means you do not want to understand yourself or other people. If you decide I don't want to judge, it means you have to have an understanding with yourself and others, and that leads to compassion. So judgment is like a wall that stops you to get into a place of compassion for yourself and others. Kind of think of it like that. So through this, choosing to be compassionate rather than to be judgmental is kind of the way I want you to go. It's choosing that path of compassion over being judgmental. This is also the action we want to take when observing other people and ourselves. When we observe other people, you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know what's happening in their day. You don't know what's happening in their week. Just as much as what someone else is not going to know what's going on in your day. So how can you truly judge a person? By choosing to start this practice of binding your judgment, this will lead you to feel empowered enough in your self-esteem that your survival is no longer threatened. And this is why we judge, because in some way or another it threatens our survival, either philosophically, physically, sexually, and behaviourally. I think that's all of them. So so by binding our judgments, we're going to get into a pattern of stopping ourselves from being judgmental, and by not being judgmental towards other people, we're going to find ourselves being judged less as well. Okay. Sorry, I was just reading some of the comments. Cool, everyone's good? Awesome. Okay. The root of the victim archetype is fear. You cannot survive or will not survive. Not just physical survival, but the survival of your identity, your hopes and your dreams and sense of self. Deep down there is a belief that you don't deserve to thrive, and that the victim is a way to have passive control over your life. There are great lessons to be had from the victim archetype. Its light aspects are having boundaries, as we've talked about, self-empowerment and accountability, which is expressed as healthy self-esteem, self-worth, and having the necessary self-confidence to do what needs to be done. Its shadow is feeling powerless, victimized, and out of control and at the mercy of others. The victim uses blaming and complaining to manipulate others. And I'm sure we know a lot of people that are sort of being like that within our lives, not naming any names. The shadow victim has become, oh god, I was just judgmental, wasn't I? So I'll call that energy back. So I'm learning as I go on. This is why I love doing these things, is because, you know, as I'm teaching other people these things, I actually learn and remind myself of these things as well. So, you know, I just shut down a bit of my shadow self then. The shadow victim has become disconnected from personal worth. This is what the shadow victim does. What happens is you lose touch with your ingrained worth as a victim. As a victim, if your culture devalues you as you are, or devalues your behavior, you will accept this opinion about yourself so that you can then belong and sort of fit in to society or to the culture that you're involved in. Another thing is blaming others and outside forces, even your own body, for how you feel, and what happens to you is a response to feeling worthless and powerless, feeling stuck, separated from others, and alienated from what you believe will make you happy and whole. Now, this is a common complaint of the shadow victim. Not only feeds into the belief that you are worthless, it makes you feel worthless. When you believe you are worthless, you stop trusting in yourself, and depending on where you're at with that, it deepens the separation in the sense that you no longer belong. The emptiness and loss causes the shadow victim to become more entrenched in fear, addiction, and empathy. So, you'll find that a lot of people who are struggling with the victim, the shadow side of their victim, will have not one addiction but many addictions, and this is a way of escaping and not having to face themselves and their issues that need to be dealt with. And that in itself can be a big thing for people that are trying to deal with addictions. Is it's so overshadowed by the feeling of victimization that they have to I guess sort of reinvent themselves through addiction and separate themselves entirely so that they can keep themselves separated from that issue. And it's usually in these situations where addiction becomes a big problem with the victim is when there has been a severe trauma caused and a severe victimization from that trauma. And so this is really one of those situations when a person's personality gets split into two, and where the addiction takes over, so that it is so masked that they don't have to deal with it anymore. And it's a really hard place to get back from, but it's a place where you can get back from, because just by admitting that you're in that situation, it's the starting point for you to be able to move forward. So the shadow victim's power is frozen in time, and it often takes looking back to find the moment you gave up your power. Challenging the shadow victim, it's not a small thing at all. The victim energy is powerful, and the shadow, it is being expressed as the power to disempower. Does that make sense? So the shadow victim is an expression of a root chakra wound where survival and the need to belong dominate. Fear is a strong motivator for survival, and the feature of the shadow victim. So I think for a lot of you out there who know a little bit about energy and chakras, you'll understand that feeling, the survival of the root chakra pull. Anytime you go into a fight or flight situation, you'll feel that energy come up from the back, the root of your back, the bottom of your spine, and will go all the way up, infecting all of your chakras all the way through. And fear is a strong motivator for that survival, and it is a massive feature in the victim. So fear-based information feeds the shadow victim and causes you to look outside for your answers, for your comfort, for your support, and for your empowerment. When you look outside yourself for the answers, your awareness diminishes and your consciousness lowers. So the shadow victim encourages you to be afraid of challenge, change, and uncertainty. This causes two reactions, one being domination, which is a proactive control, or apathy and helplessness, which is a passive control. Both of these reactions prevent the transformation of the victim archetype. the challenge for the victim is this: should I give up my power in exchange for not being at fault? Can I take responsibility for what is happening to me and recognize the power that I do have? So, a good way to begin transforming the shadow victim into the enlightened victim, so turning the shadow into the light aspects of yourself, is to feel the fear and do it anyway. Okay, so, and that's a thing that a lot of us don't want to be doing, is we don't want to face our fears because it hurts too much. But I assure you that it's going to hurt you a lot more in the long run if you don't face those fears head on and do it anyway. So being afraid and not running from your fear is the first step to transforming the victim into the victor, turning the shadow into the light. The enlightened victim understands that real power comes from within and is bound up with personal responsibility. When you are the enlightened victim, you cannot blame others because you can see the loss of power happens from within yourself. And the enlightened victim asks, what can I do with the situation that I have been given? So they're constantly looking at a situation from that enlightened view and thinking to themselves, what can I actually do with this situation that I've been given that's going to help me, that's going to enlighten me and keep me from being victimized? There are some things in life that are not for us to decide, but we can decide what to do with what we've been given, so, or what has happened to us even. And I think in itself that should be a very encouraging thought, because it gives us that power. We have the power to decide what to do with those situations. So sometimes we're not aware of how powerful we are and how much control we have over our own lives. And that's a problem, and that's something that we need to change, because ultimately our thoughts are our power. And if we don't realize how much control we have in our thoughts and how much power that does give us, you know, we're in a bit of trouble. So this is one thing that I really want to get across to people, is that you are powerful beings and you have so much control over your lives you do not understand. Like you literally can change situations that you thought could never be changed. So sometimes being thoroughly victimized actually allows us to see where our real source of power is, and that's inside ourselves. So sometimes the very act of being victimized can be a way to reconnect into our true power. And sorry, my phone's going off here. I'm sorry if that sounds really harsh to some people. I'm not going to go into examples of situations where people have been, you know, truly victimized in a traumatic way, because we all know people that have been through experiences like that, and I don't think we really sort of need to discuss those sort of things at the moment. But what I want you to understand is it can be a real source of power for you to come back from. Even though you may have been through something that is just horrific and horrible, it's something that you would never wish happened to anyone else, if you're brave enough to look past that pain initially, look past that pain, it's going to allow you to see where your source of power really is. And sometimes the very act of being victimized, you know, it can be a way to reconnecting with our true power. So I think that can be a really rich experience if we let it. We can let it take us over. We can. The reason why some of us tend to let it take us over and that trauma and that victim status keep coming up within us is because we get a lot of pity from it. We get a lot of people trying to help us and doing things for us, and it can be very easy that way. Life can be very good in a way, and it serves us for a while, because sometimes we need that effort and we need that support from others. But it comes a time within that where you need to stand up on your own 2 feet, and you need to decide whether you're going to let that affect the rest of your life, or whether you're going to actually take your power back And by doing that, you truly are, reversing the circle on yourself and come from becoming the shadow victim to the enlightened victim there. Okay. Okay, so you see, the enlightened victim can learn the power of compassion through personal experiences. This is another thing that I really, really love about the victim archetype is the enlightened victim has found victory and it wants to support others however they can do so. They have transformed their victimization into compassion and love. They recognize compassion as a form of empowerment, and it's one of the greatest gifts of the victim archetype. You'll find this in a lot of people that are counsellors, that are psychologists. You'll find this in a lot of people who are social workers, who work with the disabled, who work with even animals. And they do this because people do this because they've learned really how not to be, and they've learned how rough it can be to be victimized, and they're willing then to do anything in their power to help other people out. And you'll find that in a lot of those professions, nurses, doctors as well. And it's a way of establishing that, that they are not going to be a victim of their own victimization anymore, and that they have learnt the compassion and love from that experience, and that now they're willing to turn that experience over to someone else and help other people from that experience. And from that, they really become not so much the enlightened victim, but the wounded victim who becomes the healer victim. So it's a very enlightened state when someone is able to learn the power of compassion through that. I'll go into that a little bit further on as well. So now, okay, so I just want to circle back a little bit more on boundaries. The victim is very good at helping us become aware of patterns that don't work in behaviours that result in heartache and pain. It is not enough just to see that it isn't working. It's at this point that the enlightened victim sets boundaries. Setting boundaries is a two-part process as I see it as well. First, define what works and what doesn't work for you. In other words, find your spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental thresholds or limits and name them for yourself. Second, name and define your values to help you discover your limits and why you have them in the first place. The enlightened victim is aware of exactly where your boundaries are and why the boundaries should be maintained. Pardon me. The enlightened victim, in order to protect those boundaries, is very direct and straightforward, leaving no room for the shadow victim to squeeze in. So feeling anger is a really good way to tell if your boundaries have been crossed, and victimization is about to begin. So that's one thing that you can look out for. It's a good measure for you to sort of have for yourself, and by having those boundaries and knowing, setting those boundaries up and having those boundaries. And once you sort of start to see that they're getting cross-wired, you know that something's going to happen and a victimization situation could happen, and you can stop that before that even starts happening. The enlightened victim helps you understand and define what your boundaries will be, and then it lets you know when these boundaries are about to be violated. Learning to be direct and assertive happens when the shadow victim is transformed into the enlightened victim. So having and maintaining healthy boundaries makes it much more difficult for others to take advantage of you and victimize you. So the enlightened victim is not afraid of weakness and fragility, because what happens is you maintain vulnerability as a strength. You have learned the power that can be found even in the worst types of victimization. You are no longer afraid of failure, losses, tragedies, suffering, misfortunes, because none of these outer circumstances has the power to control your life anymore. Vulnerability is the keystone of your strength, because it allows you to discover different kinds of power and especially recognize the strength of openness. So vulnerability makes you pliable and willing to be changed by your circumstances without losing your power. Okay, so I've just rambled on a little bit there. So at this point, I'm just going to ask you, does anyone have any questions? No? If anyone has any questions, feel free to sort of jump out there. Yep, Elizabeth? Can't hear you, hon. No, can't hear.
I may have to take the, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure that it's a question or not, but when you were talking about victims' behaviors and whatever and how to recognize the shadow behaviors, a lot of times I think people who get involved in addictions do it because they think that they're buffering themselves. They've got the misconception that they're actually protecting themselves. So a big portion of that might be recognizing when that behavior comes to bear. No,
yeah.
It's not always an easy thing to do.
No. Completely agree with you. The thing about people with addictions and being under addiction because of the victimization that they've been through is it's behavior that is trying to pull away, not only from society, but from themselves. And these type of people are really actually quite hard to reach because they're denying their own personality in a way. They're stopping their own personal growth. Did you want to ask me, Hinda?
I'm just trying to figure out, other people may be asking how to recognize when those buffering techniques are actually becoming addictions which are causing the victimization instead.
Okay, yep, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so withdrawal. When people start withdrawing from their normal activities that they would be doing, when they stop socializing as much, when they become more of a hermit, more stay at home, other traits that they may have is they actually get more aggressive towards people who try and help them. They will lash out a lot more. You'll find that their behavior will become one of unacceptance towards a lot of things, and they will deny responsibility for anything in their life as much as possible. What they're doing is escaping. That's truly what they're doing. It's a form of escapism, and we all really know that through addiction. True addiction is through escaping, and a big part of the true escaping is because of victimization that's happened within a person. So, there are the depression signs that'll come up with a person as well, and you'll be able to recognize a person withdrawal within themselves. I think one of the biggest things that you'll find with someone when they're starting to enter a phase of addiction is if they're someone who is usually quite interactive, quite social, and their personality quite lively, that'll all just stop. That'll just completely change. They will become, like I said, withdrawn. They will become more agitated, and really their personality will start to completely change. And it usually doesn't really happen slightly. It normally happens on a very rigid scale, of just a complete turnaround. As in, one day they could be one person, the next day they're another person. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think another thing is there any particular things that we can do when we recognize those behaviors in ourselves to possibly reverse it or put ourselves in a better frame of mind so that we can prevent that from going any further.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just by recognizing, oh, crap, I'm falling into that behavior is a big thing. So if you're able to look at yourself, and I mean, this is in a way why I wanted you guys to do the pre-exercises that I set out for you, because if you can look back on your life and you can see patterns in your life of where you've fallen into these victim stages, and we've all done it, all of us, every single one, not one person on this planet has not been in a victim phase in their life, in the shadow phase of that. And from looking back at our lives and identifying those patterns that we've had in the past when we've fallen prey to our victim selves, it's going to be easier, if we do that work, it's going to be easier for us to then identify when we're starting to fall in that direction ourselves. But yeah, one of the first steps is definitely catching ourselves in that moment, going, oh my God, you know, I'm starting to feel victimized. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm looking to outside people to make me feel good about myself, to make me feel empowered. You don't need that. It's one of the first signs that you're falling into that victimization stage, or the shadow victimization stage, is when you start reaching out to other people for support, and not support to hold you up in a good way, but support to the point of, oh, I'm no good, tell me I'm good, and I need you to tell me that everything's going to be okay. I need you to hold me and tell me it's all going to be okay. But I mean, this is a continuous thing. I mean, we all do that every now and then, because we all need that every now and then. But when we're doing it all the time to get that comfort, because we can't get that comfort from ourselves, that's a problem. So, any more to that? Was that good?
No, I think that was good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's a hard one trying to catch yourself, especially when you first start doing this work, to catch yourself when you're falling into the victim archetype, because it's a natural thing that we've
Nicky?
grown up with. Yeah. Go, Diane.
Just a question.
Yeah.
It's, if you're saying that people who are in that trait almost, or that pattern of behavior, if they are able to recognize that they're obviously not that bad, if they can pull themselves up, but is it possible for people to get the situation where they've been practicing it and living it for so long, they actually almost convince themselves that that is the only way?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a hard one, because I have known people in that situation where what actually happens is that it kind of surpasses being a victim and goes into believing their own lies. They've escaped into a fantasy world almost, and that's kind of another archetype. But it does start out as a victim archetype, and it becomes part of their personality to the degree where there is no difference between them and being a victim. It's all one person. So they can be pulled out of it, but a lot of the time, by you pointing it out to them, they're not going to see it. It's going to take a lot of time and effort for you to be nudging them in small ways to show them their behavior and their actions are really one of cries for help. Does that make sense? Dan?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, is that good?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because
yeah,
I mean, that is it is a big problem with some people. There's some terrible things that happen to people out there, and it is it's like a safety net for them to fall into, being the victim, because they do get so much outside support, so much empathy from other people.
Yeah, there's a lady that lives around the corner here. Her husband passed away about 2 years ago, and she's been playing this "oh me, oh my" card now for so long. You know, it's so fun. That's all she does is, I can't do anything. It's all poor her, poor her, poor her, poor her, and no one understands and no one cares, and it's over it.
It can be draining, right? Yeah. So this is where the victim turns into another archetype, which is the energy vampire, actually. So we'll go into some more archetypes while we're talking about this, because it just happens anyway. So I wasn't going to, but I will. But yeah, so what's happened is she's gone from the victim, and rightly so. I mean, what she went through obviously is a horrible thing for anyone to go through. I can't even. I'm lucky enough that I've actually never lost anyone, touch wood, yet. So I don't know that sadness of loss. But when I think about it, it starts making me teary. So I can understand someone going through a period of time of mourning. I guess her coping mechanism for it is, instead of internal mourning, is for her to reach out to other people to tell her that it's going to be okay, and to get that sort of, I hate to say it, but pity party from people. People are really not like
it is like a pity party, but the sad part of it is, she then belittles what people have told her with other people.
Okay.
So it's a spiral.
Okay, so what do you mean tells you about with other people? Can you just go a little bit further with that?
Well, she might reach out to somebody for help, and they might do whatever she's asked them to do. And then the next person she can get an ear from, it's, I asked them to do X, Y, and Z, and they did it, but it's not good enough, or it wasn't done in the time she expected, or whatever it was. There's always an issue when people help her.
Okay, because she doesn't want to be helped. She wants the attention of people talking to her and telling her, listening to her and being around her, but ultimately she's not ready for that help. It's not going to matter really what anyone tells her. It's going to be wrong, because in her frame of mind, what she's been through is more terrible than anyone else could ever imagine, and no one's going to fix it for her. And this involves quite a few different archetypes. It really is the energy vampire archetype going on here as well, because what she's doing is she's feeding off other people's archetype to lift her up. Am I right saying that when you talk to this particular person, you feel shitty and really drained? Would that be right? Totally,
absolutely, totally. It's got the stage now where most people just avoid her, because it's depressing. Well, it's depressing, and it's exceptionally life is so unpleasant. There's never anything good happening, and it's just an effort. It brings you down. It sucks your energy. It sucks your energy out. So she's playing with a few different archetypes there, and it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but does she seem terribly overset, or does she seem more just wanting to talk about stuff and sort of have communication with people? She's not. She doesn't cry or anything like that anymore. That's all gone. It's now just a matter of this. It's almost like a habit has been formed whereby
So she's loving the attention.
Nobody contacts her anymore because we're all trying to avoid her.
Mm-hmm.
And she needs to keep pulling people in for the attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So
Yeah.
she obviously doesn't have any
So
love for
lawful
herself or ability to.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. So what's happened here is that she has been through something awful, and she's probably received through that experience more attention than she's probably ever received in her life. For some people, good attention and bad attention, there's no difference. It's attention, and they love that and they thrive on that. Unfortunately, it sounds as if that's what's maybe going on here, and that's developed into the attention seeker, wanting to be the center of attention, no matter what it's about. The gossip also may sound familiar, and also the energy vampire, which is going to be draining. And she's doing herself a real disservice here as well, because she is pushing people away from her. And she's going to find that she's going to be burning more bridges than she's going to be building bridges. So you can't really do anything in the situation. It's like I've had people in my life where I can see that, yes, they're doing the victim card to a large extent, and I've tried to help them and I've tried to push them and you know, sort of steer them in the right direction, if you like, point out to them what's going on. And as much as they go, oh yes, you know, I know I am being a victim, I don't want to be a victim, I'm going to take my power back, they just can't do it. And so there's only so much you can do in that circumstance, and you've just got to wash your hands of it. As long as you know you've done everything you can possibly do, it then becomes not your business, because it's then affecting your energy, and that's what you don't want to do, because then you become victimized by that person. Yeah. Cool. Martina, yeah?
Do you think in that case that sometimes people aren't aware? So some people play victim, absolutely, but sometimes people just aren't self-aware at all. So they're behaving in a certain way. They've done it all of their lives. Maybe it's something that they've seen at home. You know, that's how, you know, difficult situations have been dealt with. So that's the reaction that they've seen, and it's second nature to them.
Yeah.
And in that case, how do you make them aware without being too brutal?
Very gently. Definitely, yes, and yes. Yeah. It can be a learned behaviour. If you haven't had yourself, and myself, I haven't had myself, but I have known parents of friends that are victims, parental victims. You know, everything in their life isn't going their way, or the job sucks and there's nothing they can do about it, and there's never enough money around, and it's the government's fault, and that sort of thing. And that it grows in a child. It becomes ingrained in a child's brain. You grow up thinking, well, this is normal behaviour. Nothing's ever my fault. It's everyone else around me. It's the world. It's the government. What can you do about it? As much as probably what Diane was trying to do with her friend is give as much advice, and maybe point out as gentle as you can a few things that they're doing that's sort of you're giving off this behaviour. And if it doesn't help, you really do have to step away, because you have to look after yourself first and foremost in these situations. And I know you, Martina, and I know that you're a carer, and that, you know, you give and give and give until, you know, you always have nothing left for yourself. You know, I know you're like that. And I mean, Martina, guys, she's actually going into psychology. She's been accepted into this course in the UK, which is, it sounds very sort of privileged, and she's going into psychology. So she's got that heart that wants to help people. And yeah, it's one of those things that you can press certain buttons with people. You can ask certain questions to do with that with people, but ultimately they're responsible for their own energy and their own thoughts and their own patterns and their own actions. So yeah, you know, don't spend too much energy trying to change someone if you know that they're not going to change. You know, like I was saying, I went through an experience recently where I had to let someone out of my life who was very dear to me because their actions were starting to affect me. And as much as I loved them and I wanted to help them and see what was going on in their life, nothing I said or did could actually help them. So it's one of those things where I think in these situations when enough people start to fall away is when they actually start to look at themselves and go, okay, what am I doing wrong? And that's when they really start to look at themselves, and when they start to make change. And really in that situation, all you can do is let them know, okay, I'll be there. When you're ready, I'll be there. When you want some help, I'll be there for you. But until you're ready to listen, or until you wake up, I've got to let you go. I've got to let you out of my life because you're now affecting my energy. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so, yeah, we can't fix everyone, unfortunately. It's good to be able to, this course is good, and knowing the victim is really, really good because you will be able to notice this in other people, and so you're going to learn a lot about people's characteristics and how they're coping with life by identifying that they are in a victim archetype. You're going to know how to deal with them better as well because you will now have a really good understanding of the function of the victim archetype. You'll be able to maybe steer them a little bit into the direction, point out ways of how they can use their victimization as an empowerment, to take back their power. The biggest way I try to make people aware that they're in the victim and that they shouldn't be in the victim is asking them, what can you learn from this experience? So, yeah, you've been through something really shitty. It sucks. You were victimized. But what did you learn from it? What have you taken from it now that's going to make you stronger? And that's, I think, the best way is you can probably approach someone in that situation. And they're either going to go, well, nothing. Or they're going to think about it and they're going to come back with an answer. And then you're going to start getting them out of that. So, all right, so I'm just going to read some comments on the phone here. Yeah, cool, Elizabeth. I'll send those links out for you. I know you're in the US, so you probably missed a lot of the times I sent out those links. So I will send those links for the pre-work for you to do. Because if anyone's watching this as well, if you haven't done the pre-work, you can go back and do it. It's not a problem. It's just going to help you during this course because you're going to have a reference point to look back on. And it's just going to help you to identify these things a lot easier and make it less harder sort of for you during the course, so you're sort of not so mentally up here and you can take in more information. Yeah, and I can make them available on the Facebook event page, so I'll put those links up on the page so that you can access them. They're video exercises where I talk, so cool, yep, not a problem. Agree with this. Yeah, we lost Visa there. I'm not quite sure if her internet connection got cut off. So does anyone else have any questions? This is good, keep them coming. I like it. I like looking like this.
Nikki, I was just thinking that sometimes we're stuck in situations where we can't necessarily get away from the person that's putting the negativity in the space and creating the victim archetype that you're talking about. Maybe figuring out or explaining how to put a buffer zone between you and that person if you have to deal with them on a regular basis. Like a perfect example is in the situation of a divorce where you have to deal with the other parent of your children. I know in our house we deal with that on a regular basis. My ex-husband is constantly calling and hitting the kids with verbal accusations and assertions that leave my daughters in tears. And I am trying constantly to teach them how to buffer and understand that this is his perception. It's not who they are, but that they need to accept that that's where his mind is at and not take it personally. But is there any additional ways to buffer that maybe I could present to them?
Well, you're definitely on the right track by talking to your children like that and letting them know exactly what's going on and not trying to hide the fact of what's happening. It's perfect. I would go back to what I was talking about with boundaries, and if you're in a position with your ex, just sort of sit down and set some boundaries up with him, and then anytime he goes beyond those boundaries, you're able to sort of, I don't know, have like a keyword or a key phrase which is going to remind him that he's stepping over those boundaries again. I don't know if that will work with someone like.
I tried doing that a couple months ago. He doesn't care.
Okay.
I
So
just turn around, with me personally, I just turn around and say, you know what, I'm not doing this with you. This is how it is. This is what I'm doing, and I'm sorry you don't like it. If you want to take it another direction, go ahead, but it's not going to change the reality.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not that easy between him and the children.
No, and obviously you want your children to have a relationship with their father, yeah? So the hard thing, I mean, I guess what you need to do there is kind of weigh up, is it better for your children to be having this contact with their father in this condition, or is it better for them to maybe pull away a little bit and not be influenced by that behavior? And I know that's very, very hard.
I know that they themselves have told them that they no longer want the contact, but he will not leave them alone. He texts them constantly, he calls them constantly, he berates them constantly. And despite the fact
that's not healthy.
No, but unfortunately, I can't stop him from having contact with them because then it becomes a legal issue.
Sure.
And, you know, all I can do is explain to him what he's doing, and he's in denial about the whole thing. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to help them buffer emotionally.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just going through a few things in my head. There are a few things you can do, for sure. If you sit down with your children and discuss what we're discussing today with them, that may help them to fully understand the victim symbolically. So to help them understand what he's doing symbolically and what's happening isn't actually personal, because it's not. It's symbolically of what's occurring inside of him. So that may help them understand. They're obviously I've seen your kids, and I know they're very strong at putting up their own boundaries. So maybe even just reinforcing with them how to put their boundaries up, how to shut Dad down when he's gone too far. And I think maybe just continue conversation until it sort of gets through about, okay, this behavior is not acceptable, and point out the behavior that isn't acceptable and why it's not acceptable, and that he's displaying this behavior, and just I don't sort of, you know, without getting a restraining order, it is going to be a very hard process for you to sort of get through, I guess. And I know that's something that you don't want to do, but again, you need to think of what's good for you and what's healthy for your family. And I know you're making a new family at the moment, and that's going to be very special, and I know you want that to be perfect, and I know it will be as well. For you.
The asking is, I figure it not only in the parent-child situation, but there are a lot of situations where people are experiencing similar things. So maybe by talking about it, it would give them ideas on how to protect themselves as well, without having negative circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, if people can do that, it's great. The victim archetype is hard when working with other people, is because if they are in the shadow victim, they're going to find it very, very hard to see it. Pardon me. They're going to find it really, really hard to see that part of themselves. Even when people bluntly point out this is what they're doing, they're not going to see it the same way that you do. there are definitely things that you can do in the way of discussing this with other people or with that particular person, and you know, trying to make them aware of the behaviour. But honestly, other than making them aware of what they're doing and the effect of what they're having upon you and other people, you know, they're either going to listen to you or they're not going to listen to you, and it sucks, especially when it's someone that you have to be having contact with. But there is a time when you just have to kind of go, well, okay, this is what I've been given, and I'm going to try and make the most out of it. I understand where that person's coming from, and I understand that that person's broken, and I'm going to do my best to work with them in that. But when it becomes too hard, this is when you really need to work out, okay, what is best here for me? Do I need to completely withdraw from this situation, or is there a way that I can mend this? You know, and unfortunately for a lot of people, it takes a lot of people to walk away from them before they actually can realise that they're, well, self-sabotaging themselves, which is something we'll get into next week. But you know, it really is a hard one when you know, it's quite, when we're talking about identifying the victim within ourselves, it can be a lot easier because we can look at our past behaviours and we can use that to use in the future. But when we're dealing with someone else, we can identify it in someone else, but making them see it is a different thing. Agree?
Yeah, thank you. I think, and not just in my situation, but I think that'll help a lot of other people too. So thank you.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I want to say more about it, but I'm kind of the opinion now that I've been through enough situations where I've tried to help people through different circumstances, and a lot of them have been in the victim archetype, and it really is one of the hardest ones to move people out of. And one of the most effective ways I've seen in moving people out of that is by withdrawing myself, saying no more. Stop being so nice, and actually start being a little bit bitchy, bit more. Bitchy is maybe the wrong word, but a little bit more, you know. A
little bit more self-assertive.
Yes, assertive. That's exactly the word. Yeah, being assertive in what you're saying, and really, really trying, because I know for you, you're a very soft person as well, and so it's kind of hard for you to do that hard turn from being a soft, gentle, understanding person to going, okay, look, I've just had enough. This sucks. I'm not doing this anymore. You drain me. You make me feel like shit. Okay, so you go away, and when you're in a better mood and you've learnt your lesson, then I'll talk to you. It's hard to do that when you're a caring person and when you're actually trying to help someone, because sometimes it's what we need to do.
I know that for me personally, I've become very blunt and very honest. I'm still very soft, I'm still very encouraging, but when people start crossing those boundaries, as you put it yourself, you know, I point blank, I'm very honest with the person. Look, this is how I feel about it. You are upsetting me. This is not something that is appreciated. This is not something that's acceptable. You need to back up. If you can't back up, then I can't deal with you anymore.
And that's perfect. Honestly, that is perfect. And you can't do much more than that. You really can't. It's you're setting your boundaries. You're letting them know your limits. You're pointing out to them what's going on with them, and you know, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. And after that, all you can do is protect yourself, and that's what you're doing by standing up for yourself and setting those boundaries for yourself. So it's perfect. You know, I wish I could say there is something magical you could do in that situation to, you know, click my fingers and you know, everyone magically will understand, oh, I'm doing this, and you know, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. But people are very stuck in their ways, and especially when we're dealing with these archetypal characteristics, when we start to change them, it happens very, very quickly. And we as human beings don't like change to happen quickly. We like it to happen very, very slowly. So that's why it takes a lot of people that are in this archetype, that are playing the victim, quite a long time to move out of it. because once they do move out of it, they have to change almost everything in their life. Everything starts changing. So it's you know,
I think, I'm sorry, I think too is that sometimes we get so beaten down that we forget that we don't have to accept people treating us that way. We have to remember that no one deserves to be treated poorly or in a manner that's unacceptable. And before you can walk out of that situation, you have to believe that about yourself. And that's the hardest thing that most people do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why this work is so important, is because you're now gaining a deeper understanding of yourself. So by you now having a deeper understanding of the victim archetype, you're going to be able to identify this more in people and deal with it better with people as well. So it'll become, the reason why I'm doing this is because I want you to start seeing things symbolically within your life, and Archetypes does this perfectly. It allows you to see things symbolically and not personally. When we start to see things personally, which we do with a lot of things in our life, and it's how we're brought up. It's how society is brought up to be, is to take things personally. Everything is personal. Once we stop seeing things as being personal and start seeing things as symbolic, our lives change, and in the way that we see other people changes. We don't see people's behaviour being personally towards us or to anyone else or to an environment. It's simply a symbolic internalization of what's going on with them. So we start seeing sorry, you're right, Elizabeth. You start seeing things, and you start people in a symbolic manner. You start seeing life symbolically, and by doing that, it changes your mindset completely. It turns off that personal attack feeling of things, that personal attitude that other people may be having towards you, and changes your brain to thinking of it as well as a symbolic action. Does that make sense? I might have screwed that up a little bit because I was reading the sidebar, but yeah.
No, that's
Archetype,
great.
yeah. Yeah, Archetypes teaches you to see the world symbolically. It teaches you not to take things personally. Let's sum that up pretty quickly, actually. But that's what it does. And this is why I really do think that archetype, looking at the archetypes is so important, is because not only do you see your own life symbolically, but you get to see the world symbolically. And that just, it really does. It's life-changing. And that's why it's transformational. Dan? Yeah, hun? Diane, did you want to say?
The other thing, Nicky, just sort of building what you're saying there. Yeah, the other thing, sort of just building on what you're saying there, is if somebody is behaving like that, we shouldn't be taking it on personally, because it's their own reflection that they're battling with, and they're just putting it out on other people. Absolutely. They've actually got the issues that they need to deal with, and they just put them out, and it's easier to blame other people than it is to acknowledge that they're wrong. Exactly. Or that they've got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's projection. It's projection. So
yeah,
what we need to do as unenabling human beings is to recognize that behavior in people and not let that be okay. And that's hard, because we're going to find that a lot of people will walk away from us in our lives, because we're going to start setting those boundaries for ourselves. We're going to start seeing that people are having these projections and putting these projections on us, and we're at the, especially you guys here, you're at the point where you've had enough, and you're not going to let that fly anymore. So you're going to start standing up for yourselves, and when people do have these projections and you're standing up for yourself, they're not going to like that very much. So you're going to end up losing people in your life. But the good thing about that is when you start setting these boundaries, when you start calling people out for, throwing out projections, pressures, arguments that really, have nothing to do with you, it's going to thin the herd, so to speak, so that these people that you really don't need in your life are going to fall away. And what's going to happen through the law of attraction is you're going to attract more people into your life that are like you, that are more like-minded, that think like you, that act like you, that have the same principles as you and the same values as you. Did I answer your question? I go off on tangents sometimes. Diane, was that a good answer to that, or did you want to?
That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's a hard one. I think with that as well is just remembering that we can't. Enough's enough with people, and I think we're sort of all at the stage in our life where we've had enough bullshit in our own lives that we don't really want to put up with anyone else's bullshit if they're not willing to listen. Always try. We'll always try, but there comes a point where enough's enough, and you pull them up on that. If they do nothing, walk away. And honestly, by doing that, you really are. You're just gonna call so many people into your life that are a lot more like you, that are a lot more like-minded and more valuable as friends. So I've done it many times in my life. I call it culling, culling people in my life and getting the herd. I myself I'm always changing as a person, and I always want to be changing as a person also, because I always want to be learning. And through that, you'll find that a lot of people will stay stuck where they're at, and your personalities just won't jive anymore. And as much as, even if we've been friends with these people for 5-10 years longer, if you've changed in a manner where they haven't, you're just not going to get along with each other anymore. And it's going to be time to separate. And as hard as it is, it's going to be better for you, because you're going to let more people into your life that are more like you, and that you're going to value their company more. And it's going to be better for them as well, because they're going to have someone less to bitch about, basically. Martina, did you want to say something? No, you're good? Sorry, I thought I saw your mic up. All right, cool. All right. Well, just reading. No, that's been great. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's awesome. Anything else you guys want to discuss? Let's have a look. Gone for boundaries. I've got some notes here. Just going to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Can you tell that I'm a little bit nervous when I start these things, and then I settle down a little bit more once I'm in the middle of them? I feel really automatic at the start, but I'm getting used to it. Now it just feels like talking to friends. So, all right. What I'll do now is I'm just going to drag out and share my screen here. Again, okay, so let's go through. Okay, this is probably what I should have pulled up. Oh, can everyone see that? Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, cool. Thanks, guys. Okay, so establishing. Yeah, I should have probably brought this up earlier. So establishing contact with your own inner victim, and this actually does apply when you're talking about with other self as well. So ask yourself these questions: do I blame others for the circumstances in my life? Do I spend time in the pit of self-pity? Do I envy others who always seem to get what they want out of life? Do I feel victimized by others when situations don't work out the way I want them to? Do I tend to feel more powerless than powerful? So they're pretty good questions you can ask to sort of establish contact with your inner victim. And also, if you're looking outwards at other people, these questions will also apply, because you will be able to see this behavior in other people. Okay, so the soul lessons, just to summarize on what I said earlier on. So the soul lessons of the victim archetype is not just saying you can hurt me, you can't hurt me. It's also about managing your own behavior. It's about keeping your soul, your energy inside your body. It's your temple. So it's keeping your energy healthy. It's about not letting you lose your energy to situations, people, circumstances where it's not necessary. And it also keeps unnecessary energy out. It's being in tune with your body, with what comes in and what comes out. As we mature and start developing the self, it's essential to have boundaries because your inner life requires boundaries. It's amazing the amount of people that actually don't have boundaries with their interior self, and it's a big thing that we need to start getting awareness out there about. We have boundaries to do with other people, but we don't have a lot of boundaries to do with our inner self. You cannot have other people offering their voice into your soul, in yourself. This is where your boundaries start. This is hard because the day you start putting up boundaries with other people is the day your life changes. And other people's as well. You learn to stop running from your fear. An enlightened victim asks, what can I do with the situation that I have been given? Being victimized actually allows us to see where our real source of power is. The enlightened victim can learn the power of compassion through personal experience. The enlightened victim is not afraid of weakness and fragility because you'll maintain your vulnerability as a strength. You have learned that power can be found even in the worst victimizations. It's probably one of the hardest lessons to learn from the victim, but I think probably one of the most profound as well. Vulnerability makes you pliable and willing to be changed by your circumstances without losing your power. So yeah, question and answer time, which we've pretty much done, but if anyone else has got any questions after that, go ahead. Are we all good for questions? All good? Yeah? Alright, cool. We're running on time, which is good. It's the first. Alright. Okay, so I have one little thing here. Diane, yeah?
It's been amazing, Nicky.
Pardon?
No, I was just saying it's been amazing. It's like a very interesting. It's been amazing.
I'm glad. I'm I'm really awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Let's have. Yeah. Still getting used to this whole Google Share thing. All right. Okay. So Gabrielle Morrison, my awesome, gorgeous friend and colleague from Glowing with Health. Now, for those of you who have seen the pre-workshop webinar and have maybe seen some of the pre-workshop exercises, you will know that Gabrielle has made some amazing offers for us. One of those being access to a 3-day cleanse. And so you can go to www.gabriellemorrison.com and you'll receive that. You can contact Gabrielle directly via email at Gabrielle at glowingwithhealth.com.au. You can contact Gabrielle on her Facebook fan page, which is really a community, which is an awesome community of people actually. I'm not going to read that one out. And her website, which is www.glowingwithhealth.com. I will also have these links up for you guys on the page. I'll paste it on the events page. I'll send these in a newsletter as well as in the live feed page and the replay page. I'll put this in the comments area down below as well, so that you can have access to them, because I'm sure you probably won't remember all of that information. But I highly recommend that you take Gabrielle up on those offers that she's done. We've given away the 12-day cleanses, and those. Yeah, Diane was one, Martina was the other. Yes,
yeah, but I did her 3-day cleanse before coming here, and so it's actually turned into 4 days because I thought the hangout was yesterday, and it's really, really good. It's a very detailed, informative course that she's got for the 3 days.
Excellent. Yeah. You've got the 12. Have you got the 12-day one yet? No?
Yeah.
No, you have. Okay, cool. Keep that one on for yourself.
Yes.
Oh, no, not yet.
Yes.
No, you have.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Gabrielle will be in contact with you really, really soon, Martina. Don't worry. And I know there was someone else that got the 3-day, the 12-day one, but the name doesn't come to me right now. But they all went, and I know that everyone's been thrilled with that, so that's awesome. But you can still get the 3-day cleanse. It's very good. Honestly, Gabrielle is amazing at what she does. She really, really cares about people and about their health and about helping future generations live a healthy life. So, yeah, like I said, I'll have those links up, and please do contact her. Go to her website, go to her fan page, and contact her. She's got some amazing, even on her community website, she's got some amazing recipes that she's just giving away. They're just awesome. Chocolate recipes. Yeah. Go and have a look. Raw chocolate recipes. It's just amazing. But even at smoothies and everything, she gives a lot away. She obviously she has her paid coaching that she does with people, and she has some paid products that she makes available for people. But compared to the amount of stuff that she gives away, it's incredible. She gives that much value away to people, so it really is worth jumping onto her fan page or her website and checking out what she's got to offer. So, in saying that, I guess we'll end this one for tonight, and I hope I was a little bit nervous because this is the first time I've actually done an online workshop. I'm used to doing these live. So I've turned a live workshop into an online workshop. So I have been a little bit nervous at the start of this. So I hope that I did get the main points across, and I hope that you did get some valuable information from this. And I'll try to be less nervous next week. And yeah, I would love to see you guys next week. And I thank my guest panelists for joining me. It was wonderful having you guys. And, if you'd like to come back next week, I'd love to have you next week. I know some of you might not be available. I know that poor Diane is up at 1 o'clock by now. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's stayed up late for it. Martina, it's 11 o'clock over there by now too. Elizabeth's in the daytime, so it's okay. So cool, yeah. I'd love to have you ladies on next week, and we may even get some more of you out there on as well if you'd like. I really like this interactive conversation that we can get going, so that I'm not just a robot talking to you guys, and I can really answer some of the questions that you guys have, and I'm sure that other people listening have as well. So with that, thank you, beautiful people, and I'll see you next week. Next week, we're going to do another survival archetype. But I'm actually not going to tell you what that one is, because if I tell you what it is, you probably won't come to it. But it's good fun, honestly. Okay? So we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.